Act 2. The same as before, late that night. The doctor and Laura are sitting, talking. Doctor: My conversation with him has led me to the conclusion that your suspicions are by no means proved. To begin with, you were mistaken in saying that he had made these important astronomical discoveries by using a microscope. Now I have learnt that it was a spectroscope. Not only is there no sign of this mental derangement, on the contrary, he has rendered a great service to science. Laura: But I never said that. I made a memorandum on our conversation, madam, and I remember questioning you on this vital point because I thought I must have misheard. One must be scrupulously accurate when bringing charges which might lead a man to being certified. Certified? I presume you are aware that if a person is certified insane, he loses both his civil and his family rights. No, I didn't know that. There is one other point I should like to be clear about. He spoke about not getting any replies from his booksellers. May I ask whether, from the best of intentions, of course, you have been intercepting his correspondence? Yes, I have. It is my duty to protect the family. I couldn't let him ruin us all and do nothing about it. Excuse me, I do not think you understand the possible consequences of your action. If he realizes you've been interfering with his affairs behind his back, his suspicions will be aroused and might even develop into a persecution mania, particularly as by thwarting his will you've already driven him to the end of this tether. Surely you know how enraging it is to have your will opposed and your dearest wishes frustrated. Do I not? Then think what this means to him. Laura, rising. It's midnight, and he's not back yet. Now we can expect the worst. Tell me, what happened this evening after I saw him? I must know everything. He talked in the wildest ways and said the most fantastic things. Can you believe it? He even suggested he wasn't the father of his own child. How extraordinary! What could have put that thought into his head? Goodness knows. Unless it was an interview he had with one of his men about maintenance for a child. When I took the girl's part, he got very excited and said no one could ever tell who a child's father was. God knows I did everything I could to calm him, but I don't believe anything could help him now. Weeps. Doctor, this can't go on. Something must be done, without rousing his suspicions. Tell me, has he had any such delusions before? As a matter of fact, he was much the same 6 years ago. And then he actually admitted in a letter to his doctor that he feared for his reason. I see. A deep-seated trouble. But, the sanctity of family life, and so forth, I mustn't probe too far, must keep a safe distance. Unfortunately, what is done cannot be undone, yet the remedy should have been applied to what is done. Where do you think he is now? I can't imagine. He has such wild notions these days. Would you like me to stay until he comes in? I could explain my presence by saying, well, that your mother is ill and I came to see her. That's a very good idea. Please stand by us, Doctor. If you only knew how worried I am. But wouldn't it be better to tell him straight out what you think of his condition? We never do that with mental patients, unless they bring up the subject themselves, and rarely even then. Everything depends on how the case develops. But we had better not stay here. May I go into some other room to make it more convincing? Yes, that will be best, and Margaret can come in here. She always waits up for him. At the door. Margaret! Margaret! She's the only one who can manage him. Nurse, entering. Did you call, madam? Is master back? No, but you ought to wait for him here. And when he comes, tell him that my mother is unwell and that the doctor is with her. Aye, aye. Leave all that to me. Laura, opening the door. If you will be so good as to come in here, doctor. They go out. The nurse sits at the table, puts on her glasses, and picks up her hymn book. Ah me. Reads softly. A sorrowful and grievous thing is life so swiftly passing by. Death shadows with his angel's wings the whole earth, and this his cry. 'Tis vanity, all vanity. All that on earth has life and breath falls low before his awful might. Sorrow alone is spared by death upon the yawning grave to write. 'Tis vanity, all of vanity. Me. During the last lines, Bertha enters, carrying a tray with a coffee pot and a piece of embroidery. Bertha, softly. Margaret, may I sit in here with you? It's so dismal up there. Saints alive! Bertha, are you still up? Well, yes, you see, I simply must get on with Father's Christmas present. And here's something nice for you. But, sweetheart, this won't do. You have to be up bright and early, and it's past 12 now. Oh, that doesn't matter. I daren't stay up there all alone. I'm sure there are ghosts. There now. What did I tell you? Mark my words, there's no good fairy in this house. What was it? Did you hear something, Bertha? Oh, Margaret, someone was singing in the attic. In the attic? At this time of night? Yes. It was such a sad song, the saddest I'd ever heard. And it seemed to come from the attic, you know, the one on the left where the cradle is. Oh dear, dear. And such a fearful night, too. I'm sure the chimneys will blow down. Alas, what is this earthly life? Sorrow, trouble, grief, and strife, even when it seems most fair, not but tribulation there. Ah, dear child, God grant us a happy Christmas. Margaret, is it true Father's ill? Aye, that's true enough. Then I don't expect we shall have a Christmas party. But why isn't he in bed if he's ill? Well, dearie, staying in bed doesn't help this kind of illness. Hush! I hear someone in the porch. Go to bed now. Take the tray with you, or the master will be cross. Bertha, going out with the tray. Good night, Margaret. Good night, love. God bless you. Enter the captain. Captain, taking off his overcoat. Are you still up? Go to bed. Oh, I was only biding till... The captain lights a candle, opens the bureau, sits down at it, and takes letters and newspapers from his pocket. Mr. Adolf? What is it? The old mistress is ill. Doctor's here. Anything serious? No, I don't think so. Just a chill. Captain, rising. Who was the father of your child, Margaret? I've told you often enough it was that heedless fellow Johansson. Are you sure it was he? Don't talk so silly. Of course I'm sure, seeing he was the only one. Yes, but was he sure he was the only one? No. He couldn't be sure. Only you could be. See? That's the difference. I don't see any difference. No. You don't see it, but it's there all the same. Turns the pages of the photograph album on the table. Do you think Bertha is like me? You're like as 2 peas in a pod. Did Johansson admit he was the father? Well, he was forced to. How dreadful. Here's the doctor. Enter doctor. Good evening, doctor. How is my mother-in-law? Oh, it's nothing much. Just a slight sprain on the left ankle. I thought Margaret said it was a chill. There appear to be different diagnoses of the case. Margaret, go to bed. Exit nurse. Pause. Won't you sit down, Dr. Oostermark? Doctor, sitting. Thank you. Is it true that if you cross a mare with a zebra, you get striped foals? Doctor, astonished. Perfectly true. And if breeding is then continued with a stallion, the foals may still be striped? That is also true. So in certain circumstances, a stallion can sire striped foals and vice versa. That would appear the case. So the offspring's resemblance to the father proves nothing. Oh. You're a widower, aren't you? Any children? Yes. Didn't you sometimes feel rather ridiculous as a father? I myself don't know anything more ludicrous than the sight of a man holding his child's hand in the street, or hearing a father say, "My child." My wife's child, he ought to say. Didn't you ever see what a false position you were in? Weren't you ever haunted by doubts? I won't say suspicions. As a gentleman, I assume your wife was above suspicion. No, I certainly wasn't. There it is, Captain. A man, as I think Goethe says, must take his child on trust. Trust? Trust where a woman's concerned? A bit of a risk. But there are many kinds of women. The latest research shows there's only one kind. When I was a young fellow and not, if I may say so, a bad specimen, I had two little experiences which afterwards gave me to think. The first was on a steamer. I was in the saloon with some friends, and the young stewardess told us, with tears running down her cheeks, how her sweetheart had been drowned at sea. We condoled with her, and I ordered champagne. After the second glass, I touched her foot, and then the fourth her knee. And before morning, I had consoled her. One swallow doesn't make a summer. My second experience was a summer swallow. I was staying at Lysical and got to know a young married woman who was there with her children. Her husband was in town. She was religious and high-minded, kept preaching at me, and was, or so I thought, the soul of virtue. I lent her a book or two, which, strange to relate, she returned. 3 months later, I found her card in one of those books with a petty, outspoken declaration of love. It was innocent. As innocent, that's to say, as such a declaration from a married woman could be, to a stranger who had never made her any advances. Moral: don't believe in anyone too much. Don't believe too little either. The happy mean, eh? But you see, Doctor, that woman was so unaware of her motives, she actually told her husband of her infatuation for me. That's where the danger lies. In the fact that women are unconscious of their instinctive wickedness. An extenuating circumstance, perhaps, but that can only mitigate the judgment, not revoke it. You have a morbid turn of mind, Captain. You should be on your guard about this. There's nothing morbid about it. Look here. All steam boilers explode when the pressure gauge reaches a limit, but the limit isn't the same for all boilers. Got that? After all, you are here to observe me. Now, if I were not a man, I could sniff and snivel and explain the case to you with all its past history. But as unfortunately I am a man, like the ancient Roman, I must cross my arms upon my breast and hold my breath until I die. Good night. If you are ill, Captain, there's no reflection on your manhood in telling me about it. Indeed, it is essential for me to hear both sides of the case. I thought you were quite satisfied with one side. You're wrong. And I should like you to know, Captain, that when I heard that Mrs. Alving blackening her late husband's memory, I thought what a damned shame it was that the fellow should be dead. Do you think if he'd been alive he'd have said anything? Do you think if any husband rose from the dead he'd be believed? Good night, Doctor. Look how calm I am. It's quite safe for you to go to bed. Then I bid you good night. I wash my hands of the whole business. So we're enemies? By no means. It's just a pity we can't be friends. Good night. The captain shows the doctor out by the hall door, then crosses to the other and slightly opens it. Captain. Come in and let's talk. I knew you were eavesdropping. Enter Laura, embarrassed. The captain sits at the bureau. It's very late, but we'd better have things out now. Sit down. She sits. This evening it was I who went to the post and fetched the mail. And from my letters it is clear to me that you've been intercepting my correspondence, both in and out. The result of this has been a loss of time, which I acted from the best of intentions. You were neglecting your military duties for this other work. Scarcely the best of intentions. You knew very well that one day I should win more distinction in this field than in the army, but what you wanted was to stop me winning laurels of any kind, because this would stress your own inferiority. Now, for a change, I have intercepted letters addressed to you. How chivalrous, in keeping with the high opinion you have of me. From these letters it appears that for a long time now you've been setting my friends against me, by spreading rumor about my mental condition. So successful have your efforts been that now scarcely one person from colonel to kitchen maid believes I am sane. The actual facts of my condition are these. My reason is, as you know, unaffected, and I am able to discharge my duties both as soldier and father. My emotions are still pretty well under control, but only so long as my willpower remains intact. And you have so gnawed and gnawed at my will that at any moment it may slip its cogs, and then the whole bag of tricks will go to pieces. I won't appeal to your feelings, because you haven't any. That is your strength. I appeal to your own interests. Go on. By behaving in this way, you have made me so full of suspicion that my judgment is fogged and my mind is beginning to stray. This means that the insanity you have been waiting for is on its way and may come at any moment. The question you now have to decide is whether it is more to your advantage for me to be well or ill. Consider. If I go to pieces, I shall have to leave the service. And where will you be then? If I die, you get my life insurance. But if I take my own life, you get nothing. It is therefore to your advantage that I should live my life out. Is this a trap? Certainly. You can avoid it or stick your head in it. You say you'd kill yourself, but you never were. Are you so sure? Do you think a man can go on living when he has nothing and nobody to live for? Then you give in? No. I offer peace. On what terms? That I may keep my reason. Free me from doubt and I will give up the fight. Doubt about what? Bertha's parentage. Are there any doubts about that? Yes. For me there are. And it was you who roused them. I. You dropped them like henbane in my ear, and circumstances encouraged them to grow. Free me from uncertainty. Tell me straight out it is so, and I will forgive you in advance. I can scarcely admit to guilt that isn't mine. What can it matter to you, when you know I won't reveal it? Do you think any man would proclaim his shame from the housetops? If I say it isn't so, you still won't be certain. But if I say it is, you will believe me. You want it to be true. Strangely enough, I do. Perhaps because the first supposition can't be proved, while the second can. Have you any grounds for suspicion? Yes. And no. I believe you want to make out I'm guilty, so you can get rid of me and have absolute control of the child. But you won't catch me in any such trap. Do you think, if I were convinced of your guilt, I should want to take on another man's child? No, I'm sure you wouldn't. So evidently you were lying when you said you'd forgive me in Laura, advance. Save me and my reason. You can't have understood what I was saying. If the child's not mine, I have no rights over her, nor do I want any. And that's how you'd like it, isn't it? But that's not all. You want complete power over the child, don't you? With me still there to support you both. Power. That's it. What's this whole life and death struggle if not for power? For me, and I don't believe in a life to come, this child was my life after death, my conception of immortality, the only one, perhaps, that's valid. If you take her away, you cut my life short. Why didn't we separate sooner? Because the child bound us together. But the bond became a chain. How was that? I never thought of this before, but now memory is returning, accusing, perhaps condemning. After 2 years of marriage, we were still childless. You know best why. Then I was ill and almost died. One day between bouts of fever, I heard voices in the next room. You and the lawyer were discussing the property I still owned then. He was explaining that as there were no children, you could not inherit, and he asked if by any chance you were pregnant. I did not hear your reply. I recovered and we had a child. Who was the father? You are. No, I am not. There's a crime buried here that's beginning to stink. And what a fiendish crime. You, woman who were so tender-hearted about freeing black slaves, keep the white ones. I have slaved for you, your child, your mother, your servants. I have sacrificed career and promotion. Tortured, beaten, and sleepless, my hair has gone grey with the agony of mind you've inflicted on me. All this I have suffered in order that you might enjoy a carefree life, and, when you were old, relive it in your child. This is the lowest form of theft, the cruelest slavery. I have had 17 years of penal servitude, and I was innocent. How can you make up to me for this? Now you really are mad. Captain, sitting. So you hope. I had watched you trying to conceal your crime, but because I didn't understand, I pitied you. I've soothed your conscience, thinking I was chasing away some nightmare. I've heard you crying out in your sleep without giving your words a second thought. But now... now. The other night, Bertha's birthday comes back to me. I was still up in the early hours reading, and you suddenly screamed as if someone were trying to strangle you. Don't, you cried. I knocked on the wall. I didn't want to hear any more. For a long time I've had vague suspicions. I did not want them to be confirmed. This is what I have suffered for you. What will you do for me? What can I do? Swear before God and all that I hold sacred that you are Bertha's father? What good would that do? You've already said that a mother can and ought to commit any crime for her child. I implore you by the memory of the past. I implore you, as a wounded man begs to be put out of his misery, tell me the truth. Can't you see I'm helpless as a child? Can't you hear me crying to my mother that I'm hurt? Forget I'm a man. A soldier whose word men and even beasts obey. I am nothing but a sick creature in need of pity. I renounce every vestige of power and only beg for mercy on my life. Laying her hand on his forehead. What? You, a man, in tears. Yes, a man in tears. Has not a man eyes? Has not a man hands, limbs, senses, opinions, passions? Is he not nourished by the same food as a woman, wounded by the same weapons, warmed and chilled by the same winter and summer? If you prick us, do we not bleed? If you tickle us, do we not laugh? If you poison us, do we not die? Why should a man suffer in silence or a soldier hide his tears? Because it's not manly? Why isn't it manly? Weep then, my child, and you shall have your mother again. Remember, it was as your second mother I came into your life. You were big and strong, yet not fully a man. You were a giant child who had come into the world too soon, or perhaps an unwanted child. That's true. My father and mother had me against their will, and therefore I was born without a will. That is why when you and I became one, I felt I was completing myself. And that is why you dominated. I, in the army, the one to command, became at home the one to obey. I grew up at your side, looked up to you as a superior being, and listened to you as if I were a foolish little boy. Yes, that's how it was. And I loved you as if you were my little boy. But didn't you see how when your feelings changed, and you came to me as a lover, I was ashamed? The joy I felt in your embraces was followed by such a sense of guilt my very blood seemed tainted. The mother became the mistress. Horrible. I saw, but I didn't understand. I thought you despised my lack of virility, so I tried to win you as a woman by proving myself as a man. That was your mistake. The mother was your friend, you see, but the woman was your enemy. Sexual love is conflict. And don't imagine I gave myself. I didn't give. I only took what I meant to take. Yet you did dominate me. I felt it and wanted you to feel it. You always dominated me. You could hypnotize me when I was wide awake so that I neither saw nor heard but simply obeyed. You could give me a raw potato and make me think it was a peach. You could make me take your ridiculous ideas for flashes of genius. You could corrupt me, yes. Make me do the shabbiest things. You never had any real intelligence, yet instead of being guided by me, you would take the reins into your own hands. And when at last I woke to the realization that I had lost my integrity, I wanted to blot out my humiliation by some heroic action, some feat, some discovery, even by committing harakiri. I wanted to go to war, but I couldn't. It was then that I gave all my energies to science. And now when I should be stretching out my hand to gather the fruits, you chop off my arm. I'm robbed of my laurels. I'm finished. A man cannot live without repute. Can a woman? Yes. She has her child, but he has not. Yet you and I, and everyone else went on living unconscious as children, full of fancies and ideals and illusions until we woke up. Right. But we woke topsy-turvy. We'd been woken by someone who was talking in his own sleep. When women are old and stop being women, they grow beards on the chins. What do men grow, I wonder, when they are old and stop being men? In this false dawn, the birds that crowed weren't cocks, they were capons. And the hens that answered their call were sexless too. So when the sun should have risen for us, we found ourselves back against the ruins in the full moonlight. Just as in the good old times. Our light morning sleep had only to be troubled by fantastic dreams. There had been no awakening. You should have been a writer, you know. Perhaps. But I'm sleepy now. So if you have any more fantasies, keep them till tomorrow. Just one thing more. A fact. Do you hate me? Sometimes. As a man. It's like a race hatred. If it's true we are descended from the ape, it must have been from two different species. There's no likeness between us, is there? What are you getting at? In this fight, one of us must go under. Which? The weaker, naturally. Then is the strong in the right? Bound to be, as he has the power. Then I am in the right. Why? What power have you? All I need. And it will be legal power tomorrow when I've put you under restraint. Under restraint? Yes. Then I shall decide my child's future myself out of reach of your fantasies. Who will pay for her if I'm not here? Your pension. Captain, moving towards her menacingly. How can you have me put under restraint? Laura, producing a letter. By means of this letter, an attested copy of which is already in the hands of the authorities. What letter? Laura, retreating. Your own. The one in which you told the doctor you were mad. He stares at her in silence. Now you have fulfilled the unfortunately necessary functions of father and breadwinner. You are no longer needed, and you must go. You must go, now that you realize my wits are as strong as my will. You won't want to stay and acknowledge my superiority. The captain goes to the table, picks up the lighted lamp, and throws it at Laura, who escapes backward through the door.